Australia's year started with Sydney's most spectacular fireworks on record, a symbol perhaps of a year when sparks will fly between our two major trading partners, China and Japan. The dispute's over who owns these islands in a tranquil part of the China Sea. They're not much more than rocks, really. They're close to Taiwan. Japan has run them since 1972 as part of a post-World War II settlement, but Beijing says they belong to China. With this issue in mind, we invited AIIA National President John McCarthy to give us his view on the policy challenges for Australia in 2014. He's talking to Will Hobart.
Oh, look, I think firstly, we're right in the middle of a challenge with Indonesia, and that is a continuing challenge for Australian foreign policy. But given that there are two elections in Indonesia this year, parliamentary and then presidential, given that we have ongoing issues with not only boats but with the aftermath of the bugging affair, that's going to keep the government's hands reasonably full. Second issue, which is ongoing and really in broad regional terms and in global terms more significant and more important, is the range of issues between China on the one hand and Japan and the United States on the other. And given that we have an alliance relationship with the United States, that's going to need ongoing scrutiny. I think you need to take into account matters close to home. We don't actually read or talk a lot about the South Pacific in Australia. We should talk a lot more about it, given it's the neighbourhood. But we really do need to focus on what's happening in Papua New Guinea, Fiji, and in the smaller islands. And then I think finally there's the sort of whole multilateral area. What's happening in the UN, we're still on the Security Council there. What's going to happen with the G20 at the end of the year, the approach we're going to take on that. Now that's, I'd say, the four main areas. I don't want to exclude other areas that we should obviously keep in mind. Our relations with Europe, Africa, Latin America, all that is going to need attention. But I think those are the areas that I'd concentrate on most.
John, it's been more than a year since the Australia in the Asian Century White Paper has been released, and tensions in especially Southeast Asia, South China Sea have heightened. What do you see playing out there in the next year?
One area that clearly needs to be watched is what's happening in Northeast Asia, and we've alluded to this question of the relationships between the United States, Japan and China, and that's crucial. Korean Peninsula also is crucial. In Southeast Asia, I mean, there are the issues to do with the South China Sea, and I think there's every indication they're going to be ongoing. Internally, there are big question marks over Thailand right now. I'm not sure that what happens in Thailand can be very much influenced by foreign powers, even great powers. It's very much internal. It's very much to do with huge social changes that are taking place in Thailand. But obviously it's going to be something which has implications for the region as a whole and will need to be watched closely. But I sense that these are really issues of ongoing diplomacy rather than major challenges for Australia itself.
John, Australia hosts the G20 meeting this year in November as chair. What do you think we can realistically expect from the meeting?
These huge meetings that take place annually are of course significant, but to my mind the real significance actually is in the work that goes on between them. The meetings themselves are really culmination of a lot of thought and discussion that takes place in the lead up to those meetings. And so it's significant. And the fact that Australia's chair is important because the chair has to be one of the major guiding forces in that discussion that takes place leading up to the meeting. So it's important, no question. The issue is really how do you get people away from generalities to focusing on, serious policy change. Obviously, free trade is great, but how do you actually get people to focus on the nitty-gritty of making trade in the world freer? And I think that's the big challenge for Australia. It is how you gear up and how you bring all the various participants to the table, having done the work which enables some policy directions to be formulated. And that's tough, and that's a huge amount of very serious work.
And finally, John, what do you think the role of the Australian Institute of International Affairs will be this year?
Well, the AIIA is the only grassroots foreign policy community organisation in the country. It's the only one with offices in every state. It is a federal organisation. The AIIA is important in terms of, in my view, helping to inform the community about what is happening. And secondly, in channeling community views through to the decision makers in government. Those are the two areas I see most important. It's one of informing and education at all levels in the community and bringing forward views in the community. There's going to be plenty to do, there's no question. The world's not going to be any quieter in 2014 than it was in 2013 or before. There's going to be plenty of work to do. So I'm glad the AIIA exists, and I'm glad it's doing the work that's doing. It needs to get bigger and more active.
John McCarthy, thanks very much.
Thank you.